dancing like a feather. It's still Friday. Now it's got you blind, got you dancing like a feather. Bad weather. Don't fool yourself, girl. You can never be together. Don't fool yourself, girl. You can never be together.
We own Truck Month because we earn it every day. Ford F-Series is the #1 choice in every industry. In overwhelming numbers, we own work. Own yours and save during Ford Truck Month. Own yours and save during Ford Truck Month. Own yours and save during Ford Truck Month.
You can never be together.
At Advanced Auto Parts, we don't just sell parts. Oh no. We get you the part you need. Lickety-split. Our knowledgeable team members will do the legwork, arm work, or torso work, whatever it takes, to make sure you don't just get a part, you get the right part. Fast. Plus, right now, get up to $50 back by mail when you buy Moog steering and suspension products. Only at Advanced Auto Parts. See store for details. Mail-in rebate. Void where prohibited.
Check. Alright. I don't think anyone's in here yet. It says I got one viewer, but there might be a glitch. But if there is anyone in here, I'm about to start. It's 1:16 Central Standard Time. I turned off my monitors. I hope I don't mumble too much. If you missed the first session, it's on my archived clips. The music you just heard was D'Antoni Parks' Touch But Don't Look. I highly recommend that album. We'll be doing some anatomy studies from the LOOMIS book, The Figure for What It's Worth. This is Austin, Texas. The time is 1:16. My name is Miguel Coronado. My website's www.mciii.net. That's really just my portfolio site. There's not much on there. But you can find me on Facebook. Facebook.com/IIIMCIII. And there's a slash between that com and those I's. Otherwise, you can find my links on my live stream profile. I need to change my bio. It says I'm trying to get into the gaming industry. I'm not. I'm trying to just get clients on a full-time basis. I currently work with a production company here in Austin, doing production design, art direction, concept art. It's a small company. It's by no means like Paramount, but I have lots of fun. And I'm going to be going through the Andrew LOOMIS, and I'll be honest, I didn't look up how to pronounce it. It might be Loomi. I'll be going through his book today, and I'm just going to follow through the book, reading along what I'm, the parts as I get to them. I'm not trying to really teach so much as show you how I use the book, which is simply reading the book and following along. But I feel like some people don't exactly know how to do that effectively. I went to art school, University of Texas, Bachelor of Fine Arts, Studio Art. I'm going to open up a new window real quick. We'll get started on this. That's the wrong one. There you go. Okay, so we did the male figure on the first cast. Now we'll be doing the female figure, the ideal female proportion. I'm in Photoshop today. I was on Corel Painter last time to get that natural graphite look, but at the current exercise I was in, it wasn't relevant to the study. It's all about proportion. It's not about, it wasn't about media technique. And anyway, so I'm in Photoshop today, which is what I normally use. My brushes. Right now I was messing around with this Keikai pack of brushes, but I don't normally use these. And it doesn't really matter what they are, as most of you know. But I typically like to use my my soft round and then the hard round for sketching purposes. I don't know where the heck I saved them. Well, anyway, whatever. Excuse me. My settings for any of the brushes in these demos, I try and mimic pencil strokes as best I can. I know some people go for like paintbrush mimicking and dry media. All the brushes, these are already kind of set up if you're using this brush packet. Otherwise, if you weren't, you would let me just make a brush real quick. You would start by obtaining your defined shape here. Edit, define brush preset, sample brush 4, you say OK. I like to clear the screen, deselect, Command D for deselect on Apple. I'm on Apple, I'm not going to translate to Windows because I don't use Windows. You'll find your new brush down here. It's really basic. To get the desired pencil settings, or to mimic a pencil, you can turn transfer mode on, and it will adjust the opacity to pin pressure by default. Then shape dynamics, it'll adjust the size of the brush to pin pressure by default. And then you go to brush tip shape. You actually click this here, which it's activated right now. So if I click here, I just put the spacing to 1% because I want a smooth line. I don't want that ghosting look, which is what you'll get if you turn the spacing on. Size, spacing. Anyway, so that's what I'm going to be using today. It's nothing really. Like, I just wanted to show you all how to get the effect. If you're very new at Photoshop, it took me a while to figure out that those are the settings, because not many people talk about the settings. But then again, everyone talks about the settings, so I guess it doesn't matter. Let me find the book. Okay, so I did this first exercise last time, and if you want to go through that, you can find it in my archive stream. But the exercise, for those that followed along, was creating this graph here. Basically, most of these exercises are going to be you creating the exact illustration you see in the book, but there's a specific method that he uses that you should use in order to kind of get the most out of the study and the exercises. So I'm going to turn the page of the book. The ideal female proportion, or the ideal proportion for a female. We're going to start by reading here. The female figure is relatively narrower than the male figure. 2 heads at the widest point. So I mean, head here, 1, 2. The widest point being this end of the shoulders. The nipples are slightly lower than the male. The waistline measures 1 head unit across, so they're saying that one woman's head is ideally the size of her waist. It looks like they're actually it looks like the hair is lining up with the waist, actually, because that head, I mean, that's tiny. We're gonna go with this hairline here. The waist? Yeah. It's outside the head. Anyway, just pay attention. No woman's head is wide as the waist. That's ridiculously small. And he didn't even draw it like that, so some of the stuff you might catch on the drawings, it's not exactly. Maybe he didn't word it correctly, but anyway, on with the exercise here. The front of the thighs are slightly wider than the armpits, so at the widest point, the front of the thighs will be slightly wider than the armpit. So if we go here and just go straight up, you can kind of see that it's just outside, and narrower in the back. The front of the thighs are slightly wider than the armpits, narrower in the back. So yeah, so in the back it's going to be narrower than the armpits. Front thighs, narrower. I got you, here we go. So the front of the thighs would be, I guess, right here. Maybe that's the crotch. Back of the armpits. Anyway, these are just the guidelines. Really, you can follow the visuals. But these notes, when you read through these, your mind's going to kind of make mental recordings of certain things you might not find important right away. Later on, when you're drawing, you're going to be drawing like a woman standing or something. Or if you're trying to do concept art, you'll be doing like these turnarounds, and you'll be thinking to yourself, oh wait, the hips are supposed to be just outside the armpit. And then you kind of unconsciously make that decision in time. But for right now, we're going to think all about that. It's optional whether or not you draw the legs even a little longer from the heels down. So what he's saying is he's put her in high heels here. We're not gonna put her in high heels. That's such a distinct fashion choice to put her specifically in high heels. Remember, this was made for commercial illustration, so he is trying to draw the ideal models to represent products. He's not drawing an overweight woman at Walmart or an athletic female wrestler or like a softball player. He's drawing the model for an advertisement. So that's something we need to keep in mind. And here, various standards of proportion. The academic proportions used in most schools, rather dumpy, 7.5 heads. The ideal, most artists accept 8 heads as normal. And when he means artists, he's almost referring to commercial artists in this sense. Fashion, 8.5. If we translate this back down, in a real world, probably be a model about 8 heads tall, 8 to 8.5. And then this is like a massive. This is like the guy that played Prometheus in the movie. Prometheus, not Prometheus. There's no character named Prometheus, but the creatures. That actor's like 7 feet tall. The wrists are even with the crotch. Okay, 5 feet 8 inches in heels is considered the ideal height for a girl. And actually, of course, the average girl has shorter legs and somewhat heavier thighs. Now, he just says right here too, the average girl is not this. So keep that in mind when we're drawing this stuff. Otherwise, these proportions work out pretty well for most people. They're around where you need it to be. And then from here, once you learn these proportions, you can begin squashing and adjusting, like caricaturing the form, creating cartoons. That's what makes some cartoon artists, like professionals, way better from the kids that start off. Is they're taking this very structured system of proportions and purposely breaking them at certain points, but they're sticking with certain rules, even though they're squashing the character. So, like on Pixar, like even though some of these characters like crazy shapes and sizes, they still have a proportion that relates to their own body that's reminiscent of these proportions. Whether you're doing this book or any other book, it's just follow the steps of the text. Don't just draw this stuff. There's a way to draw it, and that's how we're going to be doing today. And I'm going to go through this one, the female proportions, a lot faster than I did on this first one. I'm not going to break down my every single thought process, because this is me getting myself practice, and if y'all want to follow along, it's great. But I'm not by any means trying to directly teach this. I'm just going through what I'm going through all the things I would have said in my head to myself as I read the book, versus speaking it out loud right now. So nipples and navels are 1 head apart. So nipples, navel, 1 head, 1 head. It's like 1 head apart from. Okay. Both are dropped below the head divisions. Okay, so the head divisions slightly below the head division. 6 and a 6th, navel, 5th and a 5th, I guess. 5th and a 6th. I think it's a 6th. The elbow is above the navel. It is important that you learn the variation between the male and female figure. Yes, that's very important. When I was little, all I drew were dudes and men and like comic characters, but because, I don't know, I was a boy, also I used to draw characters from make-believe games that me and my brother used to play, so they were all male, so I always learned how to draw male figures. And I really didn't, like, if you looked at my old sketchbooks, there's just no girls or female characters whatsoever. And so I only really started practicing seriously drawing like women and girls in college. And I mean, I'd sketch people in class in high school, but it wasn't like a serious study so much as just looking at the person next to me and drawing them. Okay, so 8 head units, just like before. Oh, I got 2 viewers here. Hello, everyone. Hope y'all can hear me. I don't have two screens. I'm on my laptop, so if y'all can't hear me or if I mumble, just let me know, because I do that, and it'd be hard to understand what I'm saying. The first study, we created a grid of 8 marks, and if you watch the first video, unsuccessfully divided that some crazy way. So 1, 2. This will be the top, so I'm just going to go down 8. Instead of doing a bottom point and top point and dividing, I'm just going to draw 8. Oops. There we go. Just eyeballing it. But I'm doing a better job than I did before. I was streaming last night doing a sketch just at my girlfriend's house. And I was actually kind of liking it a lot. I was going to go ahead and save it and keep working on it later, but Photoshop crashed, and so it was supposed to just be a silly sketch, so I didn't bother saving it. But then Photoshop crashed, so it was like I had no choice but to not save it. So I started recreating that sketch today. It'd be like a background for my live stream. I'm going to number this the same way the book does too, because last time I didn't, and I was confusing myself. 1, 2, 3. So from the bottom, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We're going to number from the bottom up. This is 1. This is 2. This is 3. This is 4. This is 5, 6, 7, and the top one is 8. This bottom line is ground. It's going to be darker, so just to show that it's not. This is like just the other line. Right. I'm at 100%. I'm at 72 DPI. I want to see what I draw is what I get. If this were a larger file, I'd be zoomed out, but it's not. And I need y'all to be able to see what I'm doing, because I don't have a high quality stream right now on this account, because it's money, and I don't have that money right now, so I'm going for this free option. Fix my desktops real quick. There we go. 8 heads. We'll start with the head. This shoulder, if we go from the center head out, and we do one more half head, it brings us right here at the top of the shoulder. So it means if we were to go a full head, this is about a full head, right? It's the outside of the shoulder, just like the male figure, right? But we said earlier that at the widest points, she's not supposed to be wider than 2 heads. So the male figure at his widest point was not supposed to be more than a head, 2 heads and a third. So we're going to go ahead and stick to everything he says here. 2 heads at the widest point, meaning outside arms are going to be the widest. Let's go. Just going to start drawing a head here. I'm going to save on a different layer in case I need to make adjustments. And if this is the first time you're joining in, I'm not going to try and draw it perfectly. I'm just going to worry about the proportions. So this marker is 1 head, so I got to keep all of the head inside this guide. I'm not going to do like it's not going to peek out from under anywhere. I'm going to kind of give her like a softer jawline, because this is the feminine form, and the jawline makes a huge difference when you're creating. I'm just going to clean it up just a little bit so it's not so messy like last time. I'm not going to flip it. I'm not going to worry if it's crooked or it's all about proportions. I'm not worried. I'm not trying to draw like this perfect person right now. This wasn't mentioned in the lesson, but it says it's not necessary at this stage to attempt to render the anatomy correctly, but fix in your mind the divisions. So, while we're drawing the female figure, this is really exercise part 2 of this first one. So we're on part 2 of a 2-part exercise right now. And it was telling us to not worry about the anatomy, fix our mind on the divisions. So that's what we're going to do. I'm not going to worry about whether or not the bicep is the exact bicep proportion or whatever. I mean, proportion, yes, we want the proportions, but not the exact shape, and I'm not going to shade it or anything. By the time we're done with this, it should look exactly like this drawing, at least, or as close as we can get to it. And if it's not exactly like that, that's fine, because this is all part of the learning, is that we're practicing. I'm going to divide her body real quick, just because it's all about the divisions. We're going to go down. And remember, this head at the widest point, which would be like right here, one head, just a little less than that. I think the perfect way to follow along with this is if you're actually on pen and paper, which is the medium this book isn't assuming you're using. They're assuming you're on pen and paper. They're not assuming that you're working digitally. This is a third of the way down is the top of the shoulders. So we're going to divide this section into thirds. It's eyeballing it there. Top of the shoulder should be right there. Excuse me. It's not perfect, but I'm paying attention to what the book said. I personally don't like that quality of line that I was just now performing with. I can probably make that wider. There we go. Let's take a look. It's about really close. It has a lesser degree of a slope than what I just created. So let me just work that into there. Just erase real quick. Go back over. If you're using a really light pencil, just go over it slightly darker. Don't even bother erasing because it's not necessary. Yeah, I know concept art has like sketchbooks, and Crimson Dagger has sketchbooks and stuff. But you gotta remember that back in the day, I mean, think about like a middle school or something. You wouldn't throw your sketchbook out in front of people. You would throw out your finished image, and that's what you really need. You need to have your finished image. Your finished images are what you want to show off. All the sketchbook stuff doesn't need to be polished and perfect. That's where people see all the mess ups and the learning process of how you got to your finished image. And it's good to show that off, but I've seen some people critiquing sketchbooks, but sometimes you need to critique the finished piece, because the sketchbook is the artist critiquing himself. And if someone comes to you and says, check out my sketchbook, what should I work on? That's different, but I guess, if you're putting your sketchbook on a public forum, you're kind of asking for critique, so anywho, don't worry about this being perfect, is what I'm trying to say, because it's not supposed to be. The bottom of this deltoid muscle stops at line 6, so we're going to draw that in. I'm not doing the normal drawing process I use, which would be blocking in, like I would normally just start blocking in really fast, and I would probably make some lines here to kind of give myself guides, and I'd go through and draw it fairly quickly. I'm going step by step to make this exercise slightly harder for myself, because it's training. And if you don't train and exert yourself, then you'll never get any better. You always have to draw things that suck, and like things that aren't, that are hard to draw. The same way when you lift weights, you gotta lift heavy weights, or not heavy weights, but you gotta use, proper technique, and it's not easy. A third of the way down for the bottom of the breast. Oops. So we're gonna mark. Oops. Let me check that out again. Yeah. See, let's look at that space here from the chin, which is line 7, to a third of the way lower than line 6. Line 7, a third of the way lower than line 6. That looks. It looks like it's wrong, right? And that might be the case because I may have drawn it slightly off. But if we see head, it should be about the head, right? I'm about right on with the drawing right now. This is the line, bottom of the breasts. Third of the way down. By number 5, we're hitting the elbows and waist. That should be all on the same level. And if you look at the drawing, it's kind of above the line, and the waist is slightly above that 5 line, which is fine because no one's exactly at that proportion that we're shooting for. I'm going to keep going back and forth from right to left as I draw. I'm not going to stick to one side and only render one side, because I know plenty of the time when I'm drawing, I draw one side of a person, and then I draw the next side of a person, and the next side is always slightly off because I spent so much time on that first part that I'm like, you get kind of like focused on just the right or just the left, and you don't think about the whole image. It's looking funky here. Something's not right. Probably because her forearms are huge. Not too worried, but I still want it to look like an actual human. That's the whole point of the exercise. She's also standing at attention. Whenever you're drawing, the first time, if you watch the other video, I start drawing the dude with his legs spread apart slightly, but he's drawing these people like full attention. Deltoid, bicep. Biceps more like that. Forearm. I need to learn those muscles. She's supposed to have only a head width. That's like just a head. It would be like she comes in this far, right? Because that's... I guess not. Maybe not. Maybe she is just a head. Maybe we just stick with the book that we're trying to learn from, instead of trying to make assumptions. Right, so that was the waist. It's the waist. It's looking pretty rough right now. It's pretty rough. I'm assuming that I got this head off. Yes. fitting in there. Just gonna erase it and make her fit. The other thing is that this is a drawing, right? This isn't like you're sculpting in gold. Just erase it. Don't worry about messing up. It's not like it's going to cost anything to erase. Maybe a piece of paper if you're doing it traditionally. But if you're not, I feel like that's about a head. I could do the whole copy and paste thing and actually literally put her head on there, but I'm not that concerned. Look, not reaching. I just make it reach, right? It's softer. She looks way too wide now. But whatever. Maybe I'll fix this other issue that I had earlier. I'm just gonna follow along and stop wondering, thinking I know better. This is the study. The shoulders look really big, but refer back to the image. Okay, I'm just going to start drawing it. So anyway, what you just saw, I went down and actually using some of that crappy sketching technique that we mentioned yesterday, that was mentioned in the book. That looks better. You want to make your lines fluid movements. You don't want to pet your line in. That's how Andrew puts it. Andrew Loomis. And this should be down here. Should be down here. This. You make deliberate strokes. I'm getting the fuzzy line because I'm kind of correcting myself. I'm trying not to do the petting thing, and digitally I do that a lot more because my Wacom tablet is so small. I just kind of get used to like redoing the stroke over and over again. But traditionally I have a better control of my pen. And you start relying on the undo button. You don't worry about it so much. Alright. Move this arm out. Just gonna get through this little study. That's how you're supposed to go through this book. You're supposed to like sit there and like fucking figure out how the hell you're supposed to fit her in this little perfectly gridded system. And this is the learning of this erasing and going back and seeing what I've done visually and making decisions like, oh, she looks too narrow, and then realizing, oh, maybe he was right, the guy that wrote the book. You know, that's part of it. That's why you got the book. I feel like I didn't, I feel like I'm still not exactly following. See, like I want to put the elbow up here, but if we follow the model, it should be more out to this line, which is about a head length out. We could also just divide it this way. So 1, 2, that's a half. 3, right about there. Oops. 1, 2, 3, right? start working on different layers so I don't keep erasing my progress. My pen stopped working for some reason. I feel like I'm not in the right. Oh, 33%, no wonder. I don't know why I didn't notice that. Alright, back to work. Let's see here. Neck, do the slant out to the top of the deltoid. That's the highest point, so we're going to go down, slope down, stop here. Neck, straight down, slant. This is the highest point, deltoid out, slope down, stop. This is the line here. Stop right around here. Right? Okay. Arm, so this is the deltoid, and that's the deltoid, and she's obviously not that ripped or whatever, but we continue the bicep down, right? So that, because the elbow is supposed to follow right above the line, and the bottom of the breast is supposed to be here. I'm having more trouble with this in the male figure because, as you noticed, or as I said before, I've never studied the female figure as much as I did the male. Which I think is, you either get these guys that only draw dudes, or they only draw women. I don't think, it's not until they start trying to draw seriously that they start realizing, oh, I gotta draw the other sex. Or I gotta you have to be able to know how to draw the other sex also. This looks too bulky, but whatever. This is supposed to be one head, but let's just do this real quick, take a look closer. So this is one head. It's not one head. It's like a head and a third of one head. So if I follow the text, I'm going to end up making her look like one head would be like this. It's like a Dita Von Teese corset. I'm not going to do the one head thing. Maybe it means it's inside the rib cage here. Let me check the chat. Just make sure anyone's talking to me. Nope, I think I got like no one right now. Anywho, so one head from the drawing does not match one head from the waist in the actual drawing we're trying to recreate, so I'm not gonna put the one head because it looks off. I need to get the Intuos 5, and I only say I need to get that because it's got that touch capability, so you can kind of easily turn your image. You can easily turn your image, and it allows for that real, natural drawing interface that you get when you're drawing with a pencil and paper. You just turn the page if you need a better angle, and I don't often use that turning as much as I should. I normally just kind of keep on. It's more like a digital painting, I guess. So you know, painters don't often turn the entire canvas to paint. They kind of keep it on the easel and just work from there. So I don't really do that with my digital painting, but I should, because I'm more used to drawing on paper with pencil, and to mimic my own preferred media, the capability of turning the page, rotating the paper would be desirable. Okay, continuing down. This is the top, so I need to like soften that a bit. Okay, and the widest point is 2 heads, so we've got that marked off. The widest point is 2 heads. Haha! That's my fatal flaw. I didn't even see it. And if you're following along with me, you probably are going, what the hell is he doing? So if the widest point is 2 heads, I'm too busy talking is what it is. If we look here, I got 1, 2, 3 heads. 2 heads would be here. So my entire struggle this past few minutes was well, it was simply the fact that I was just drawing the wrong proportions. That's the whole point of this exercise. Right. Nice, nice. Okay. Let's do this right. Here's 8. Let me make a nice dark line there to show the top. Merge that. Start a new layer. Here's the head we want. Right. The chin is up. Trying not to do that line petting. I'm also trying to retain control of my pencil. So sometimes the movement's not making any marks. That's why I'm trying to just get my hand into the arch of that chin line that I want. And they gave her hair on the model because her hair comes up to like here. So let's just pretend she's got some kind of hair. Okay. Dividing it. Let's divide. Right? And if this is 1 head, if this is 1 head, I'm just trying to make the lines look a little nicer. But the more I sketch, the dirtier they look, right? You just gotta stop. I'll take off the damn hair, it doesn't look good. Right, so. That's 1 head width. It's actually a little off. That's 1 head width. And this is slightly smaller than that. Let me just... There we go. So we take another half head right here. I'm going to take another half head right here. There we go. So the whole body should not be wider than these 2 lines here on the outside. 1, 2. Actually, this would be 2. So this is 1 head, 2 head, 3 head where the man would go. Doesn't exist here in this because we're drawing the woman. So I'm going to put in these guides, these new guides. Pay attention to what you're doing, guys, because you gotta make a fool of yourself on a live stream doing a study. But you'll notice the benefit of following those guidelines was that visually I noticed it didn't look right, and the answer to my visual conundrum was that I didn't have the proportion set up right, and I was trying to force a proportion into this, it doesn't exist, right? I mean, it does exist, but it's a man. It's a male proportion. That's what it was. So, a third of the way down from 7, remember, was where the top of the shoulders start. I'm going to divide this by a third because that's where the breasts start. And 5 is where the elbows start. So with this new, let's see how wide he makes the neck. The neck, as I expected, is always as wide as the jawline. They don't do that in anime too much, but typically a woman's neck might look smaller, I guess. Most humans have a neck that is the same width as the jaw. So, if we're following the new proportions, now our head looks a little too masculine. When we're following these new proportions, on the wrong layer. Okay, as I was saying, when we follow the new proportions, lots of what we're just going through is going to make a lot more sense now. Because she's so small, her waist really wouldn't be much more than a head width. One head. I still feel like I'm making the neck too wide. It looks like it's a masculine head is what I've drawn. It's too masculine. And I drew in the wrong layer here. There we go. I'm just going to soften the jawline and clean it up just a tiny bit. It's not the most symmetrical head. Place in there. Let neck. Slant to the top of the shoulder. Should be more of a slant like this. Top of the shoulder. So it's a severe slant. And with only 2 head width, it's more severe than a man's shoulders, which makes sense because we're drawing a woman. And typically, they don't have as squared off shoulders as a man does. Even though most men don't really have squared off shoulders the way most people draw them. Everything is much more organic than the way people want to draw. And like those really, really squared off shoulders are like bodybuilders. Clean this up on the inside. So, anyway, at this point, if you're following along, you might be way ahead of me because you noticed that you didn't draw the wrong head proportions. But that's fine. Y'all can be ahead of me. I want the practice for myself. I don't want practice for anything else other to improve myself. This is the bottom of the breasts. So I'm off on that drawing. That goes up. Pardon me real quick, I'm checking my phone, that's why I stopped drawing. Okay, back to the drawing. So, with the new half head, two head width, and if we take these guidelines down from the all the way down, and we take this one all the way down. Oops, there we go. It's kind of a messy movement there. The waist is supposed to be this wide at the widest point. And like I said, we're doing a little wider because that's what the study showed. Stop it. There we go. It's looking a little more like his now. I guess the rib cage comes out beyond here, and then it comes out. The hips are going to be on the widest point of the hips is going to be on line 4. So on line 4, the widest point would be somewhere. Let's see, it's going to be within the armpit area, so like here, right? It seems way off. But no, see, these are the outside of the hips. The same here, line 4, right around here. Outside of the hips, just outside. Breast, arm will go down. It's looking really narrow. Really, really narrow. I think you feel like he's got like a more like maybe I didn't draw this line right. I feel like this should be more like a little more square looking. But I'm not going to do that. Oops. Undo, deselect. This is what I need. Sorry, that's to get on the other side of the mic. I'm just going to lower this down and bring the neck down further. And it's still within the proportions that are outlined, but it's going to match the figure more. The figure meaning the drawing in the book, not the figure of, not the actual drawing of a figure that we're doing. Wait, I guess in a way the drawing is a figure though, sorry. Okay. Let's be out. I guess at the, if we follow the rules, it was supposed to be in this narrow, and then we go out for the pelvic bone, and then out further for the hip. God, I keep terrible sketching thing I'm doing. I think I did through most of the last video too. Yeah, I guess that's about right. I feel like this can come out further. The hip can come out. The hip is within. The front of the thighs are slightly wider than the armpits. So, as I just went against the reading again. I was trying to make them within the armpits, I just misread. They're slightly wider. That's why it looks weird. That's why I was failing. Okay, this is the pelvic bone here, and then the actual hips, if the armpits are here, then the hips will come out slightly wider. Right? It's going to come in at line 3. The hip starts to come inward. The bottom of the knees is above line 2. Line 2. And the bottom of the knees will be here. She's standing at attention, so we'll put that out there. The crutch is on line 4 in the midpoint here. That's where this little V shape would go. V. I watched V for Vendetta last night. I did not remember any of it until I saw it last night. The only part I remembered was like the spoiler part where she's held captive, and I'm just going to spoil it for if you haven't seen it. She's held captive for a long period of time, and it turns out that it was the good guy, or the anarchist, the entire time, tricking her. That was the only part I remembered, and it just seems silly because that part was like a big spoiler, you know. And then when you watch the movie the first time, you're suddenly shocked, like, what did he do to her? Why did he do that? But, right, so these. Let's take a look at the legs. There's a gap from the knee to the calf. So from the knee to the calf, there's a gap, right? Because that's how the calf goes here. There's another gap right here, a slight gap. The knee to the calf, slight gap, calf. Now there's something about the calf on the male figure that we drew in last time. Like the calf only comes out a certain distance. Let's take a look at the calf. Outside calf, if we go straight up, it's almost lining up with this one little faint contour of the rib cage. I don't really have that on mine. It goes up. Let's clean this up. Clean this up too. Okay. Calf. This should be the foot, the bottom of the foot. So with heels, she reaches 8 feet. Oh, okay, see? So, what is that distance? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, whatever. I'm just going to cut this portion off. That should be the bottom of her feet, which means this should be higher because her feet end here. Her feet end there. Means this be a little higher. Real messy what I'm doing here. It's okay. Remember, because this is the heels. So ideally she's 8 heads tall with heels on. There we go. I feel like that's way off. I feel like some of these the mass of her is off. But I guess I'm not supposed to focus on that because it was all about proportions and divisions. This is where the elbow was and the wrists are right here. Man, I'm failing at this right now. 4. A third of the way down is the crotch. Midpoint. X is there. Crotch slightly under. X is on the 4 line. And then a third of the way down. A heavy hand. This should be where the hips are. This is the midpoint. And the wrists line up with that. This looks way too skinny. This doesn't look correct. She's like really scrawny. I guess there are women like that. I feel like we drew the scrawniest woman. This is supposed to be the widest point, so really this whole half should be in here. My phone's going off. I'll check it. Okay. I'm going to let this slope up more, and I feel like I'm just this is so much more of a struggle because it just looks so off. I mean, like, it looks like she's just way too skinny, right? It said that it should be at the widest 2 heads. I feel like that's just not right, because it looks like I'm drawing an Oscar statue. Slope gently down. Arms. No, we're not supposed to go past that line because that's the widest part. And then the forearm. So dangerously close to that line. Okay, so if that's where the wrist is, I feel like that is like the woman proportion. And the head should be a little smaller. This head should be that looks closer to the drawing. We have to have the drawing here, so if we take a look, of course the heads are slightly off. Could just do that. It's pretty close. I guess that the pelvis is lower than it should come out wider, I guess, here. This would be less of a there we go. That's closer. It's not exact. But I need to have more practice doing this proportions of the female form. Or at least these ideal proportions of the female form. I guess that's about right, yeah. Then what the navel is supposed to be just under here. That's the rib cage. Huh. We'll see where we're messed up. Oh, she looks wider than mine. Oh well. Onto the side view. We're calling this done because it's a study, and that was practice. And that was a good practice session. It was nice and hard, at least as far as following the proportions given in the book and trying to recreate that in the method outlined in the book. That method being setting up the grid and working within the grid. Hey, Mr. Brock. It's Ted Brack. I was watching one of your color studies yesterday. They were very helpful, and then I started practicing the technique and found myself being watched by my first two viewers, and suddenly I was like, oh, I'm in the middle of just sketching around. Anyway, then Photoshop crashed. But hello. You're watching me drill through these studies and just completely, I don't know how early or late you were here, but I completely just miscounted, and so I had like this really manly woman. It just wasn't working, and then finally I stopped and counted my marks, and I realized I was off by like a head. It's just pretty bad because it was only like 2 heads, and I had a third head in there. Right here, I guess, was the old. I was trying to make it like a man's proportion. And anyway, following along with the book, like I was, following the guides, we're just going to get the side profile and get the back. I'm going to use a lot more of my own intuition on this one. I feel like if I'm not listening to my own intuition, I screw up a lot more as far as this drawing goes. But this should be the head, kind of doing a skull shape. Not going to worry about the hair. These proportions continue throughout, just like the book states, so I'm going to go ahead and draw those across. Just 2. Straight across, that's where the shoulders, the top of the shoulder should be higher than that. So kind of stick to that. Bottom of the breast, oops, slightly off. Bottom of the breast right there. This is supposed to be where the wrists go, where the hands, wrists / crotch is going according to the book. So we take a look again too, and a third of the way down, crotch, also the wrists, but the wrist, to me, the wrist is this little bone right here when I think of wrist. So the bone is slightly above, just barely above the hand, and then the butt. It all lines up there. We're not putting her in heels because I don't think she has huge feet in my drawing too, but whatever. It's part of the study. And by part of the study, I mean it's part of the learning. So learning and trying to conform to this method that the book has presented us. And really it's just about doing this, using these techniques with the book. to get practice and force yourself out of a habit. My habit being, well, I don't draw anything like this when I'm actually drawing my stuff. I normally do use I take the advantage of the digital tools, and I'll use the transform and liquefy and adjust as needed because I have Photoshop, and why would I not use that tool to help me? But for traditional practice, for the sake of keeping my traditional technical skills the same, it's good to follow along and break the habits. The same way, if you always draw with line, it's good to try and draw with tone. And if you draw with tone, it's good to draw with line. How wide is she? Let's take a look. According to the book, is she 2 heads? She's like, but if the head stops here, oops. I don't know, I keep going back to the book. I actually put the file here, so turn that off, multiply. So if this is one head, we'll cut through the hair and pretend that it's this distance, which is like an ear to the back of the head. It's kind of arbitrary. Look, a third, I guess. A third of the head. The front of the hips come. It looks like the front of the hips line up with the corner of the eye. That's not stated in here, but just visually keeping that in mind, that she's kind of drawn at this slant. Not as much as the man, I don't think. The man was like, it's like really off, and it looks off only because the men's center of balance is in the chest, women's center of balance is in their hips. So it would be kind of normal that a guy would have his chest out like that. I mean, that's just the way your body's built. And then, or my body, or men's bodies, not built like this, but okay, it's not as harsh. She's also wearing heels, though. I really wish he didn't put her in heels. I feel like he has this big spiel about the nude as a basis, and he puts the nude in heels. But like I said, that's because this is to train artists in advertising and commercial illustration. So he's showing you how to draw the model woman, and today would have been like, let's hire that model that no one looks like and shoot her for the ad. So keep that in mind again. So anyway, turn this off. Back to the drawing. Where was my guide? Just paying attention to that. Those guidelines you're kind of forcing yourself in to. I normally try and draw a loose skeleton when I do draw, which is kind of what I'm doing now, because I don't feel like wasting so much time going back and forth on the he's got her hands like more straight down. I don't feel like wasting time going back over it and sketching over and over again like I did earlier. And like I said at the beginning, if you weren't here, well, you'll hear it in the recording. I'm just repeating myself over and over again if you listen to the recording. I'm doing the study for my own practice, and I'm catching my own flaws in my technique. So if this is the deltoid, this is my thought process. So this is the deltoid, right? This is like where the arm ends. Actually, right here he's got the line where it ends, but it's about here. That skin and fat, that's the bone would be here, right? The end of the arm, the actual arm, because that's the shoulder blade here, is going to line up with this back of the knees, according to my little line I made. And I'm sticking to this the book as my reference, so let's say the shoulder blades go out just here, and the arm stops here, so down the ways, so this is where the knees are supposed to be. The back of that line should line up here, so the knee is supposed to be like here, right? And then the front of the hips came out. How far? Front of the hips line up with the back of the eye. I didn't draw the eye. I'm not going to worry about that. This is supposed to be the butt, right? Yeah. Just kind of a slope. And then this line here is supposed to hit the back of the knees. And there's kind of that, for people, for human beings, there is this gap where the muscle stops. And then like you got all this connective tissue. And then continue down, you get the calf. She might be leaning a little far forward. He gave her the heels and she would have been like that. No, I guess I'm drawing it off, because if the heels are here and that's the top of the heel, then her foot should be slightly higher. It's obviously off, so that's correct. That's correct. I'm just going to draw the way I believe it should be, and then we'll check against the study itself, and then we'll see. But if you've been listening, you'll understand that the last few times I've been doing this, I've been not paying attention to the guides and then having to correct myself. So it's been a good little session this time around. That butt looks out too much. It looks too big, but it's not. I feel like these proportions too are like, you know, these are no longer the ideal women proportions from what you see in advertisements now. This is supposed to be the whole head, so let's keep that in mind too. This is the cranium supposed to be further down. No, it should be up here. Maybe. I feel like there's not. That's about right. Let's take a look. Let's turn it on. Multiply. Ah, crap. She's a little taller. I drew her taller, so I drew her at 8 heads. Naturally I would, because my guide set her for 8 heads. What he's saying is that women without heels are going to be like shy by a 1/6. But all in all, the amount of times I've had to draw on you, let's just do this. Maybe I put her legs too far back, but it's a good way to measure and see how you did it. Should bring your legs more directly down. I'll do that because she looks like she's falling forward. It looks like no. See, I didn't take note of this. So you got this line that comes out past the abdominal. So let's do that. Put that line in. Get down. This should be the bottom of the knee. Just kind of forcing it in there. Up. Calf out, not too far. He really drew in like that. There's a slightest break in the line, and it continues. You can really see what the calf muscle is. That it's very subtle and looks very nice. He's got the height of the chair in there because you wouldn't just be drawing a woman, you'd have to be drawing the woman doing something, advertising something. Let's get all this. This is confusing. I'm going to erase that. The sternum would be more here, so you would slope in right there. And the abdominals. Yeah, I don't see this as the today's version of the ideal woman. I'm not saying that today's version of the ideal woman is my version of the ideal woman, but I feel like this is definitely different than what we're used to. Especially the man, too. The man's out. That's not the ideal version of the man today. That's like, so she's better in those heels. I'll just crappily force heels into here. There we go. I'm going to end up working more on the heels than the actual body. Anyway, we'll finish up with the last one now. That's there, yeah, see? The knees are a little sloped up. It's a little off, it's not perfect. Not trying to be perfect. The calf's the calf is higher. Now I'm recognizing differences that I see, because I would not stop here as far as like an actual drawing of a woman and be like, done! But for the sake of the study, I want to move on and get to practicing the other parts. And I'm following along with the exercise as it recommends in the book, which is to set up the guides and go through step by step and just draw down. It's just not what I would... It's not what I want to do. What I want to do is I want to block out the whole shape, loosely put in the parts of the body, and then adjust accordingly with, if it were traditional media, I start erasing and adjusting, or since it's digital, I would probably cut up and liquefy and do all this other stuff that I have available to me in traditional media, in digital media. Okay, the back view now. So the whole front and back is not supposed to be wider than two heads. Two heads. Which I'm not going to copy and paste anything because this is part of the practice. Just draw the damn head again. Get used to it. I like scribbling it in here. Not the most feminine head. Actually, I think it's a lot better than the last one I did. But if y'all have been watching, I've gone through like 3 iterations of this. It just looked too manly, and I kept knocking it out, and redoing it. But that's part of it. That's part of, you know, don't get satisfied in the studies. I mean, this study is about proportion. And I don't want people looking at the head going, oh, it looks like a man's head. I want people to focus on whether they got the proportions right. And this little struggle of cutting through and readjusting, that's the learning. That's the part, like I said before, if this is math, that's me writing 2 + 2 = 4 on the side, and then using 4 over here in the main equation. Head length, right there. If that's half, it's a little off. Way off. There, if that's about half, I'll add another half on. Another half on. Right. It's not supposed to go beyond 2 heads. Let me just double check. I'm just going to check with it. 1 head fits in there. 1 head fits in there. Great. If you're doing traditional, just get a ruler and measure it, I guess. Alright. So we're going to keep the entire figure within 2 heads for the ideal proportions of the woman. Let's take a look back at the book. Female figure is 2 heads wide. Okay, 2 heads. He reiterates it. 1 head for the waist. 1.5 heads. I didn't read this the first time. This would have helped me on the first iteration. Whatever. Now knowing that, you can go back and reapply. What I've been doing is kind of reading through each stage. What I should have done was read through this whole thing. Well, it's like what I did with the man. I read through the whole thing first. That's maybe why I had another easier time. Half a head, and then look, 1 head here. So if we check back here, it should have been 1 head. It's a little wider than 1 head, but this should have been 1.5 heads. That I moved my drawing too because I had widened it. 1.5 heads. That's about 2 heads, and I feel like this is larger than 2 heads, so this is off. So we're not going to do that this time. We're gonna do it right. Top of the shoulder should be here, and it seems like such a small place, small constraint. Back, it should be no wider than this, so at the widest point I'm just going to knock the lines down and we're going to stick inside there. We're not going to go any wider than that. It's just like, it just looks off, right? It just looks totally off. Let's take a look back here. I feel like this head is like a man's head, that we're using the man's head unit for the woman, because her actual head's like that, and it's not the same. Oh shit. Let's just take a look. Lasso tool. Let's lasso her head. Need to rasterize. Okay. Lasso her head. The head doesn't fit within this head proportion. Maybe if I use a man's head, it would fit. But if you notice the edge of the head here, I guess the ears would be like right here. Still doesn't fit. It's pretty wide. I feel like they're using a man's head to measure the woman's body. That might be what they've done. With that said, I'm going to add extra edge on. And I've already kind of learned my lesson doing this earlier. Learned my lesson about utilizing my own proportions that I think were right, but I have a feeling that I've been drawing long enough to know when something looks messed up and wrong. And that just doesn't look right. It looks a little more natural. She's not like emaciated. Not even emaciated, just like dwarfed in some strange way. They got like hair on her too. It's just harder to see what he has in mind, because he's keeping it very. I mean, like, why would we need to put the hair on the form? Because obviously it's a woman. It's just a convention that if it's a woman, she must have long hair. Anyway, it still doesn't change the anatomy and the proportions we're using. It's just me complaining aloud. This is all stuff I'd be saying in my head that I normally wouldn't say to. Well, I wouldn't normally say because I'd be alone working, and I'd be crazy talking like that. Look at this drawing. This, I guess the armpit would be here. Oops. Armpit would be here. This line is going to go past that. It's almost to the edge. He's got her arm out too, which we'll stick with this one. Line out. Let's put that in. Line out. Line out. 5 is the waist, so at line 5 we should have another head length. It should be no wider than one head. So let's just do that. Just straight lines into that. Should be no wider than this. And then at the hips, it's supposed to be a head and a half. Well, if these are our 2 head mark, let's make the hips. Let's make those stop within here. The original. They're faint. You probably can't see them, but they're the original lines I erased. I'm just gonna put them in there. Not completely correct. No, I mean, the curves aren't completely symmetrical, but they're proportional for sure. Checking my phone, sorry guys. It's been going off. I needed to check it. This line's the butt, so let's put the butt in. Right? I still feel like that's a little off, but whatever. I say whatever because this is the practice, right? I kind of broke the rule just now and went outside that line, but one of the things, when I used to work at a haunted house, and I used to work with a team of people that did special effects makeup and created sets and painted stuff, masks, faux painting, set painting. And one of the things I always told them is, what you see is what you get. And meaning, I could follow, like, I'm messing up on some of the study stuff because that's part of the learning experience, but when I see that something's off, if it matches the guides and it still looks off, and I show it to someone else, like if this were an actual, some kind of like a client work, a project, or if I was going to present this to my art director, and I knew it looked off to me and I gave it to them, it would look off to them too. It's not going to magically look better. It's not going to suddenly just be good because you turn it in. And this doesn't apply so much with drawing as it does with like translating drawings into 3 dimensions, which is like, if you're a concept artist, that's what the job's going to be, whether it's video games or movies. I got people painting masks. They didn't know what they were doing. They didn't know how to use paint, how to do proper faux finishing techniques, and they would like just do a really crappy job thinking that it's just somehow going to look better once they say I'm done. But if in the end it looked off and you didn't do anything to fix it, it's always going to look off and it's never going to be the right thing. So I broke the little barrier here, which is supposed to be the widest point, but if I took off this line, it's just like her arms away from her body. It doesn't really matter. Long story short, that's my excuse. Could just be an excuse. Could just be me. There we go. It could just be me trying to justify messing up. Excuses. Calf. Bottom of the heel was supposed to be here, right? Which means the top of the foot would be like here. Which means that's about right. Like at the beginning of the study it said, don't try and render details, don't worry about the anatomy, just worry about getting in the proportions. And that's all we're doing. If your drawing doesn't look like the guy's drawing in the book, that's good. If it does look like the guy's drawing in the book, then it's really good. But, you know, you're supposed to have trouble with it. The guy who wrote the book on anatomy, that's what he does. He studies all the time. If you felt comfortable enough to write a series of books on just the human anatomy, then, you know, of course you're going to draw the turnarounds perfectly. These calves look a little wide. It's only supposed to be a head. That's right, it's supposed to be a head. So, remembering that it was supposed to only be a head, they are too wide, right? Because we're following the guidelines. we're not following what we think. We're following these given proportions. We're sticking to this LOOMIS study, and this is supposed to be a head and a half. So let's take that and just measure. One head, when it's actually two heads, but that's okay because we extended it. It might still be a little off, but all in all, I think that's all right. It's pretty rough though. It's pretty rough. To erase this, and I can't see the chat. I've only got one screen, so if y'all are talking, I'm really sorry. I'll check back in a second. But you're gonna like see me check, so you'll know when I see it. It's a little off on the symmetry. It looks. She's got a slightly wider set there. Oops. Probably because the line goes out further here. It's a little too wide. I'm kind of breaking the rules on this a little bit. Anyway, okay. There we go. Study 2. That's pretty much it. That's all I'm going to worry about. You can go back over and do this again and do it all proper. But unless you have to draw the woman in the ideal proportion at this exact turnaround gesture, you're probably never going to need to draw this again. Because if you have a real interesting character, you're going to want to at least like have the legs spread apart so you can show off the clothing or whatever, the armor, anything. If it's an illustration, you're probably not going to have her, unless you're drawing like a tin soldier. It's good. Picked up a lot today. I can feel it in my brain. Alright, let's take a look at the book now. It's almost 3 o'clock. I think everyone can hear me, right? Pretty sure. The one person, maybe. Anyway. Various standards of proportion. I think I went through this earlier. Let's just read what it says here, though. You can see at a glance why the actual or normal proportions are not very satisfactory. All academic drawings based on normal proportions have this dumpy, old-fashioned look. So, academic drawings, meaning drawings in done in an academic setting, meaning drawings in an art school, meaning a more correct, real form, have a dumpy, old-fashioned look. He even gave him like an old-fashioned, like old mustache. Most fashion artists stretch the figure even beyond 8 heads. In the allegorical or heroic figures, the superhuman type, 9 heads may be used effectively. Note at what point or head unit the middle of the figure falls in each. Yeah, the middle of the figure raises up a bit, which, I mean, of course it would. You've increased the distance. You can control the appearance of height or the shortness in any figure by the relative size of the head you use. Right. So, let's move on. Let's take a look at this. Ideal proportions at various ages. The growth of the head is very gradual, only adding 3 inches up and down from the first year to adulthood. The legs grow nearly twice as fast as the torso. Thank God, otherwise we'd be like giant baby people. These proportions have been worked out with a great deal of effort and, as far as I know, have never before been put down for the artist. Is he like complimenting himself? It's funny. But whatever, if I did an entire book on anatomy, I'd talk about how awesome it was all the time too. The scale assumes that the child will grow to be an ideal adult of 8 head units. For instance, if you want to draw a man or woman about half a head shorter than you would draw the man. If you want to draw a man or woman, and the woman's about half a head shorter than the man. I should probably kept that in mind when I drew this woman just now. The 5-year-old boy you have here is a relative height. Here is his relative height. The children under 10 are made a little shorter and chubbier than normal since the effect is considered more desirable. Those over 10 a little taller than normal for the same reason. So what he's saying is that those over 10 are made a little taller because that look is more desirable. And those under, under 5 are chubbier because that's more desirable. So what he's saying is if it's a kid, make him look cuter. Make him look slightly chubby and cute. And if it's supposed to be older than 10 years old, you got to make him look attractive. The flat diagram. Let's take a look at this. How to produce the flat diagram into the ground plane. So this would be the next exercise, the flat diagram. I'm not going to go through this. If I need to draw kids, or if I want to practice drawing children and stuff, I will, but not today, and maybe not next time. The flat diagram, how to project the flat diagram into the foreground plane. You will learn later how to build the solid from the flat diagram using 2 planes. Fill in the 16 units followed by the half diagram. How to produce the flat diagram into the ground plane. This will prove most useful when you have to draw without a model and for shortening. Great, yes, so when you have no model, he's telling you how exactly to draw the human body in perspective without the use of a model. So if you practice these techniques and master them, you will not need models. Ideally, but why not? Right, sorry, answering my phone. I don't know if that's picking up that my phone's going off, but I'll get in the habit of saying that I'm checking my phone real quick. Fill in the 16 units by following the flat diagram. Shadows can be drawn by this plan. It is a guide for the solid in perspective. Shadows can be drawn by this plan. It's a guide for the solid in perspective. Flat diagram, sitting pose, and flat planes. The flat diagram is no more than the tracing of a shadow. Okay, so he's saying that this flat diagram is literally like tracing the shadow of someone standing in perspective, Only 2 dimensions, but it's our map. So we're using the shadow silhouette as a map. We can't do without it until we know the way. We can't do without it until we know the way. Right, so utilize the diagram until you internally utilize it. Draw the diagrams through until you learn it, basically, until you are so comfortable that you don't need to draw the diagram, because at a certain point you're just not going to need to. I used to draw like the skeleton all the time. I probably should do that more often, but I used to go through the whole, like, draw the head, and then draw the neck, and then draw the shoulders, then draw, like, in middle school I did this. Every single drawing was like, start off this way. But I do more of a contour. I'll do this thing where, like, I'll draw the contours of the form. So, like, if it's a fist, I would draw it like that. And this would be like the forearm. This is the bicep here. And I kind of adjust as needed as I draw. So it'd be kind of like the guy's arms reeled back or something. And I'm just kind of building from the form I see ahead of time. I don't do the skeleton anymore. And I'll go back in and adjust as needed. This fist might be a little too big. The forearm's a little big. Anyway, the point being that once you learn the technique, you're not supposed to do it in every single drawing, but it probably would help 2 ways of rendering the box with a flat diagram in perspective. You are urged to learn this now. It will help you out of many difficulties later on. So, this is what we'll do next time. The flat diagram. Doesn't look too fun. It's very technical, but it's studying. Then some more flat diagram. Well, I'll just see how far I can go next time doing this flat diagrams and quick setup of proportions. He's like marks it off. Whoa, I didn't know I could do that. So flat diagram, I'm gonna keep going. Some more complicated stuff, layouts, placement, figure size. I'll just go through all this, do one, probably every weekend. I gotta get a good schedule going though. Never draw the limbs straight and stiff without spring. Right. This looks more fun. It'll be fun to go into that stuff. Oh hey, here's the contours I was talking about. Flat diagram, 3 dimensions. Alright, anyway. Flat diagram next time. I'm done with the study for now. I'm going to end this stream so it saves. And I'll probably just get back on and sketch live. Just on my other digital painting. Whatever. Wait, oops. Let's close that. Delete that. We'll save this. I'll save the session 2. I'll save this video. Like I said, it'll be available for anyone to follow along. The first half is me messing up like on this first form. So anyway, thanks for watching. I'm gonna get back on in just a second as soon as I make sure this saves. Save that. No, I do not want to save that. And I'll be working on this. It's this dead dude with a scythe, sickle. It's a zombie. It's a zombie. So I'll be working on the zombie. And yeah, great. So thanks for anyone that came. If you're watching this later, thank you for watching. You can find me on Facebook at www.facebook.com/IIIMCIII. You can find my portfolio website, mciii.net. I'm on Crimson Daggers, Concept Art, DeviantArt, CG Hub. My user handle is Mike086. On CG Hub it's different because someone else had that. But you'll see the same. It's the same art all the way through, the same stuff. I need to get new stuff out. Anyway, I update Facebook. I'm also on Instagram, Mike086. Thanks for watching. I'm going to end it, then start it up again on a new stream. It's been fun. Bye-bye.